Thank you all for joining us today for Risky Business. Don't be a victim of ransomware. We're going to wait just a few more moments to have everyone join in, and we'll get started in a second here. Just give us one more second and we'll get started. All right, hello everyone. I hope we're all ready to go here. My name is Ken Davis, the Director of Business Development here at eTrepid. I'll provide you all of my contact information at the end of the webinar in case you want to get a hold of me. I'll give you my email address if you are interested in setting up a quick chat. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you all to Tom Blanford, the CEO of eTrepid. Tom has a unique career path as a US Navy veteran. Tom's military service and information technology background has led him to create eTrepid, which has become a premier award-winning global IT service provider. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with eTrepid, our team focuses on the area of cybersecurity, cloud computing, AI, machine learning, as well as unified communication. eTrepid services are highly customizable and can be specifically developed to meet any business needs or compliance requirements. We are headquartered in Mechanicsville, Maryland. So we're excited to have Justin Rainmuth, the CEO of TechRug, joining us this morning for coffee and conversations with eTrepid. In today's discussion, Justin will address what every company should have and what to do to protect themselves. So as part of that discussion, he'll address why every organization needs cyber breach insurance, ensuring certain agreements are included on a cyber breach policy, business email being compromised, ransomware data extortion, as well as the advantages and characteristics of an effective cyber policy. Now, after the presentation, we'll address any questions you may have, plus we'll give you an opportunity to take advantage of a free trial and assessment to help enhance your cybersecurity efforts. So let's hold our questions until after the presentation to give Justin an opportunity to provide all the information he has for us today. So please feel free to use the Q&A feature that is provided at the bottom of your screen to ask questions or comments in the chat section. The eTrepid team is monitoring these sections and will provide answers to your questions when we get to that portion of the conversation. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. The first 100 people who have registered and does remain on the webinar until the end of the discussion will get a $10 Starbucks gift card. We did receive your information during the event registration and will be reaching out to ensure you receive your card right after the event. So with so many great things for us to cover, you know, this will be an interesting conversation with Justin, and we're happy to host this midday pick me up. So thank you all for joining us again. Now, as I've mentioned before, we're delighted to have Justin Rainmuth, the CEO of TechRug, with us here today. Justin has many years of experience in information technology. Along the way, he has maneuvered into insurance. Since 2004, he has had the responsibility of managing risk for over 600 IT companies in the areas such as general liability, workman's comp, employment practice liability, commercial crime insurance, and errors and omissions insurance. Now, we know Justin has a lot to cover, so let's get started as he guides us through the best way to ensure we're not running a risky business. Justin, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ken. Hope everyone's having a good morning. I don't want to bore people too much with too much insurance, but I'll kind of highlight kind of what's going on in the industry, what we're seeing. And then obviously, if anyone has questions, please let us know. So, as the slide indicates, right, ransomware is a big problem right now. And I think the biggest thing, for the audience to understand is that, we hear a lot of people that, hey, listen, this won't happen to me. I'm only a two-person organization. I mean, I've been on hundreds and hundreds of these claims, and I've never had one person say, when we got involved with, the folks, because this is, most of it's coming, it's out of the country, right? There's not to say that there hasn't been some, but, they've never come to us and said, hey, we specifically targeted your client because, they only had 3 employees or they had 400 employees, right? I mean, a lot of these attacks, right, are just, they're finding vulnerabilities in the security because patches weren't done or something like that. It's almost like, I don't know, envision like going fishing, right? You throw a net out into the ocean, there's bound to be some fish that'll swim through and they'll catch it, and then they reel it in and they got the fish, right? And that's kind of what they're doing and what's going on right now. Ken had put up some statistics here, and I don't want to get into reading you these statistics, but going through a ransomware attack is it's a nightmare, quite honestly. And if you don't believe me, just to kind of run your organization through a ransomware fire drill, I would ask your IT service provider, in this case eTrepid, to unplug your network tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in the morning and turn it back on at 5, and let me know how your day goes when you can't check email and access your management system. There's a lot of business interruption. You're going to probably lose clients because those clients are coming to you because they want access to either information that you need to give them. So if they can't get that, right, clients tend to put up with it for a couple of hours. But when you're talking about days and weeks, which some of these ransomware attacks can last, put your organization in a tough spot. And really what we saw, Ken, was, in 2015, 16, people started kind of paying attention to cyber insurance. And a lot of those folks were, really centered around, hey, we want to get cyber insurance for, I'll call it bucket A. But in bucket A was really, we have a bunch of PHI or PII. So PHI is protected health information. PII is personally identifiable information. So, in states like, Maryland, Virginia, Ohio, where I'm at, there are laws on the books that say if this information is compromised, you have to do A, B, C, and D. These are some of the insuring agreements that Ken put up here, but that's kind of the sensitive info group, right? And they really wanted to make sure that we had the theft or disclosure of protected health or personally identifiable information, and then we had the ability to provide credit monitoring to those affected, and then we had the ability to engage with forensics to make sure what was the damage and report back to the state of what was what happened. And then you want to make sure that you've got a PR team available in case you make the local newspaper. So that's kind of the first bucket of why an organization looks to reach out and get cyber. The second group is really centered around their systems, right? So they're really worried that in case of a ransomware attack, if we're shut down, do we have the right policy that will cover us things for business interruption, or to recreate data, or to pay the ransom in cyber extortion, or to initiate bricking coverage, which is computer hardware replacement. So the second group really is paying attention to their systems and how important they are, and how that on a day-to-day basis, how it keeps the organization going. The third group really focuses, and again, it's okay if you're all 3 of these, but the third group really comes to us and pays attention to some sort of cyber crime event. So they know someone that was subject to a business email compromise or some sort of unauthorized electronic funds transfer. So security, everyone on this call, is extremely important with these things. I mean, I think you'll see now if you go to apply, for cyber insurance and you did it 3 years ago, the questions that the carriers are asking today, they weren't asking, 3 and 4 years ago. And they're almost getting into, what I would call the MSSP space, where they're monitoring via external surface scans what's going on 24/7. Because, these policies, if well written, they're very broad, and if they weren't, I got an email from a very large company on it was before that, but it was like mid-June, but on 7/1, they were non-renewing and they weren't writing any new cyber business. The reason why is that for every dollar they collect, they're paying out $3. So the carriers now are starting to come and say, hey, listen, if you don't have things like two-factor on your email, if you don't have things like a backup inaccessible from your network, right? If you don't have things like multi-factor on OWA, then guess what? Either A, you don't get the coverage, B, we're going to add some additional exclusions that really limit the policy to maybe only 30% of it working, or C, we're going to sublimit where everyone else might get $1 million of cyber extortion or ransomware protection. We're only going to give you $100,000, So to me, if you're going to look at kind of the risk management pie chart, it involves both security, making sure that you're doing the right things, and also it involves insurance. And again, on our end, I can't tell you the number of times, a couple of years ago where, it was mostly people that were coming to us were, medical offices or legal offices or accounting offices that had a lot of this sensitive data. But now, I was just reading an article yesterday that was talking about the construction industry. They're really targeting construction, and, the ransomware is a huge, huge problem. And I saw that a lot of these construction companies that have cyber policies, they said, be prepared because your premium increases could be 50 to 100%. So again, I don't want to turn this into talking too much about insurance, and it's not a fear tactic. But if you don't have the right security in place and you don't have a cyber policy in place, I would just caution you, because the attacks, whether it's a ransomware attack, a business email compromise, a cyber crime event, we're not seeing less and less of these. We're seeing more and more of these. And I think that statistics on that previous slide, would kind of reiterate what I'm talking about a little on this webinar today. I don't know if Ken, if you want to open up the questions or you want to take back control. I told you I don't want to bore people too much with insurance. Hopefully I made it somewhat interesting.
Well, it was very interesting. Thank you, Justin, for taking the time and sharing all of that key information with us. Those are very important insights. We do have some questions in the queue at this time. I'd like to invite Persephone, eTrepid's outreach coordinator, as well as Tom Blanford, our CEO, to go through some of the questions that are submitted. Remember, if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature provided at the bottom of the screen to share, and we'll try our best to answer as much as possible. Persephone, Tom, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So we do have a couple questions here. Our first question is, how much does cybersecurity insurance run?
Yeah, you can get policies as cheap as $1,000, that are well written. There's a couple things that the carriers are going to look for, right? They're going to look for, what's the size of the organization. So obviously $1 million company and $100 million company are going to have, two different premiums. What industries are you in? There's obviously industries that are more of a target than other industries. What kind of, security is in place? Again, they're really focusing on, if you don't have certain security. We actually had a government agency, a water treatment plant. I don't want to say what state it was, but they didn't have data that was encrypted in rest. Now the carrier was willing to offer terms, but instead of the premium being $10,000, it was $15,000. For some reason, they didn't want to encrypt the data, so I don't know what was going on, but they ended up paying $5,000 more. So there is an underwriting process that you have to go through. And I would encourage everyone on this call, the simpler the underwriting process, the less coverage you have. So if you're not going through some sort of, I don't want to say it's a painful process, but a rather lengthy process, then I would say your policy is not that good. Things that I would caution and stay away from. And listen, me as an insurance agent, I've got insurance agent E&O, and there is a cyber bolt-on that I could add on. but when you read the cyber coverage, it's not that good. A lot of it's focused around PHI and PII. If that were to happen, they would provide notification costs, they would provide forensics. But again, if you were to ask me what is going on these last 2 years, these bad actors are really into, kidnap and ransom insurance, i.e. cyber extortion, ransomware, and they're into cyber crime, tricking you into sending money or taking over your emails so that you see all the non-financial emails, they see all the financial emails, and then they're getting their customers to pay them and not you. So that's really what they're into is the ransomware and the cyber crime. So I hope that answers specifically your question. But again, it would range anywhere starting from $1,000 on up. Do I think that they'll stay in that range? No, I don't. I mean, the carriers are actually running out of capacity. So a lot of them have what they call reinsurance treaties or reinsurance agreements. And since the carriers have gone through and maximized the amount of cyber that they can write, they've had to go to their reinsurance companies and say, hey, can you free up another $40 million? They probably will do that, but it will come at a price. So I expect premiums to go up. But again, this coverage is critical, and it really has to be part of your organization going forward, in my opinion.
Okay, great. Looks like we have one more question. What is the process to gain cybersecurity insurance?
Yeah, so you'll go through an application process. It varies carrier to carrier. I think the biggest thing is that these policies are unregulated. So it's not like applying for auto insurance where, 99% of the time you go for it, it's the exact same policy, whether you pick carrier A, B, or C. So different carriers, some of them might run some of these external surface scans, some might not, some might have ransomware supplements, or they might have e-crime supplements. A lot of those e-crime supplements are, they want to know, do you have positive pay set up? Do you have dual authorization or out-of-band authentication set up? So it really is, it varies, carrier to carrier. But if I could reemphasize, the more stringent the underwriting process, the better you are, because it's probably they're offering more coverage and they're probably hiding behind less exclusions.
Okay. All right. Are there ways to test my company's security before I try to get cyber insurance to know how much risk I have and how much coverage I should be seeking?
Yeah, I think that, again, when you get with your local agent or agency, they should help you out on the limits. Anyone that says that there's a silver bullet when it comes to the limits, they're just not telling you the truth. Because again, I've been on attacks where the ransom's 500,000 and 5 million. So, at the end of the day, I kind of remind people, what would you pay to get your kid back, right? I mean, that's kind of what the ransom is. If you're willing to pay $1 million, then they'll take $1 million. Sometimes they'll negotiate. Sometimes they won't negotiate. Sometimes they'll get into your email. They'll see you have a cyber policy and they'll ask for the amount that's on your cyber extortion limit. So if it's $1 million, they'll ask for $1 million. If it's $2 million, they'll ask for $2 million. So those are kind of some of the things that, that in terms of limits, it makes it hard. The other thing I would say is that I've been on cases where, these bad actors are really, really, really good at encrypting the data. The decryption process is a nightmare. It can take days to a week, and it's just time. It's not that the people aren't doing their job. It's just the amount of data that's encrypted, and the decryption process, it could be either a little out of whack, right? It could not as smooth as some of the others, or it just could be the volume of data that's tied up. So again, if you're going to be down 2 days versus a week, well, you need more business interruption coverage, So I would say going through the underwriting process, you should probably be able with 60 or 70% certainty determine some sort of limits that are good for your organization. But there is no, underwriting manual that says, hey, if you do these things, with 100% certainty what limits you should carry. It's not like insuring your house where it's pretty easy to tell what the replacement cost is. Again, what's the ransom amount going to be? How many days are you going to be down? Are the bad actors going to engage or not engage? Are they going to, negotiate with you or not negotiate with you? There's just so many moving targets when these ransomware attacks take place.
Okay. And someone asked, can you be denied cybersecurity insurance?
Yes. So, again, it could be, the carrier, if you go to a particular carrier, it could be a capacity issue. It could be a security issue. Maybe you don't have the right things in place. I mean, I could be quite honest with that. Water treatment plan. I was surprised that with the encryption that they even offered the coverage. I mean, they did it at 50% debit, but I thought for sure they wouldn't offer it, but they offered it. So, I would go back and say, I would encourage maybe just get an application, take a peek at the application, give it to eTrepid and say, hey, listen, how do we fare on this, right? I still would encourage everybody to make sure that you can check all those boxes because, if somebody really wants to come pick on your cherry tree, they're going to do it. That's why you need cyber insurance. But a lot of these attacks are still, they're sophisticated, but they're not targeting people. They're targeting vulnerabilities and exposures. They're not targeting companies. I mean, when you're talking American Express or Verizon or somebody like that, yeah, they're going to target those, but they're not targeting, 3-person accounting or insurance firms or lawyers or things like that. So they're really just looking for the vulnerabilities. So I would encourage everybody to make sure that security is up to speed, because it's an important part of this equation.
Okay, and then our last question, are you required to comply with any specific compliance or audit obligations?
You mean as in the person applying for the coverage?
I believe so.
Again, it's going to be up to the carrier. Some of them might make you go through and, when you talk auditing, if data is being hosted or something like that, they could make them go through some sort of SOC 1, SOC 2 type 1, SOC 2 type 2, SOC for cybersecurity. They could make you do something like that. I would still say where the premiums are at right now, between the external surface scans that they're doing, as well as the application process. They might ask for things like, hey, can we see a patch compliance report or endpoint security report? But it's still mostly kind of, hey, what's on the paper and how are you answering these questions? And oh, by the way, we're going to do some artificial intelligence and some of these external surface scans on our end to make sure that there aren't exposures that aren't on that piece of paper. So I would say, in terms of qualifications, it's really up to the carrier, but a lot of them aren't going down that road yet. If premiums continue to increase, I could see something where, hey, if you go through a SOC 2 type 1 or a SOC 2 type 2, you get a 15% discount on your premiums, but we're just not there yet.
Okay, and Justin, looks like we do have one more question. I'm sorry. The question is, how long does each insurance policy last?
A year.
A
So
year.
you can't get it for, more than a year. A lot of people want to say, hey, can I buy it for 2 or 3 years and get a discount? This is constantly, the market is changing, things are evolving. So, you're only going to be able to lock in for 1 year, and then you're going to have to go through another underwriting process a year later. And chances are it might look a little different. The questions that they asked last year, they're probably not going to ask, this year. They're probably going to ask the same questions, but they're going to ask additional questions, right? Or they may have an additional supplement, or they may run an additional scan or something like that. So 1 year would be to answer your question.
Okay, that looks like that was our last one. Thank you, Justin.
Oh, absolutely.
Fantastic. A lot of great questions there. Thank you, Persephone. Thank you once again, Justin, for joining us today and taking the time to share this information. With that, I'd like to take a moment to discuss an offer BreachBit and eTrepid has for everyone who is participating in today's conversation. I'll bring that up for you. Now, we've teamed up with BreachBit to get you on the right track when it comes to cybersecurity concerns. In the chat section, we've placed a link to sign up and take advantage of a 30-day free trial of the BreachBit's Intelligence Red Team, which will provide you insights into your business risk and where you're most vulnerable. Following the trial, eTrepid will review with you your security assessment results and provide you with options to strengthen your security and protect your data. Again, the link has been provided in the chat, so simply fill out the form and we'll follow up with you to provide additional information, answer any questions you may have, and prepare you for the trial. Now, you must sign up by August the 2nd to take advantage of this exclusive offer. If you have any general questions about services or want to learn more about cyber insurance, please feel free to contact me. Any information that you may want to share with us, we can discuss. My information here is listed on the screen. Also, feel free to contact Justin with TechRug. We'll be more than happy to address any questions you may have and provide you with further information. In the meantime, you'll receive a survey. We would love to hear your thoughts about the information that you did receive today. Lastly, just to be sure, that you guys will join us again in our next coffee and conversation topic. We wanted to inform you about change management, the conversation that we'll have on Thursday, September the 23rd at 11. Lion Guard sales engineer Scott Davis will provide insights on monitoring changes in your technology for security and compliance. So please do keep an eye out for more information about that event, and we will be updating you guys soon regarding that. We'll provide a recording of today's event for everyone and answer any questions that we may have missed, as well as sending the $10 Starbucks gift card to those who qualify. In the meantime, we ask that you take a moment to fill out the brief survey. Feel free to follow us on social media. If you are interested in getting more updated industry information, check us out at eTrepid on these social platforms listed on the screen. Thank you all for joining. We look forward, hopefully, to us talking soon again. And hopefully we can see you all at the next coffee and conversation on September the 23rd. Thank you, and you all have a great week.